Language is the quintessence of the brain functions of human beings. The world of words, of mundane conversation, day to day conversation, and the world of words of intellectual, spiritual, religious, mythological, scientific, and artistic thoughts, of mathematical abstractions, make the totally evolved human being. Language liberates us and to some extent constrains us too. But when did language appear and why did it evolve? From point of view of natural selection, it developed for communication, for the neurology, merely an expression of another neural contribution to construction of mental imagery through language or the precise knowledge, um, the reflective thought and imagery mind creates internal model of the world that is uniquely capable of representing or coping with the complex social, cultural, practical challenges. Inner thought, not our outer communications alone, was the faculty upon which natural selection worked. The language is only a medium for that. So, it is impossible to separate evolution of language from evolution of introspective consciousness, a human faculty which is distinct from other group of animals. To assess social behavior of a group, to predict and to understand it, one has to create a model of social interaction, partly by being aware of one's own behavior and motivation. Language and introspection, consciousness can combine to do that. This is known as social brain hypothesis, the social brain hypothesis. From brain size and form and the anatomy of our larynx and voice box, language must have developed gradually, beginning early and continuing even now, relatively in different groups and in different individuals. In all mammals, the larynx is high in the throat. Underside of the skull is flat. In man, it has a low position so that the range of sounds is produced and underside of skull is formed flexed like a bridge. From Homo habilis and to Neanderthal, the degree of this flexing gradually increased through time, beginning with Homo erectus. This is a signal of gradual development of language abilities in man. Homo erectus had smaller holes than Homo sapiens in the spinal cord in thoracic region. The enlarged holes in Homo sapiens accommodates the well-developed necessary nerves that control muscles of the chest wall and abdomen, which is important for fine orchestration of breathing and for producing complex spoken language. This being less, the speech of Homo erectus would not have been as good as that of Homo sapiens. Artistic expression, the symbolic abstractions are unthinkable in the absence of language. Symbol making or engraved or painted image making and expressions therefrom which are having artistic value in Indus Valley civilization has to be thought of in this context. To develop that much of art, symbolic abstraction and communicative scripts, lipi, the human being must have evolved a language very, very early and perfected it through several stages. And Paleolithic Acheulean tools from central India and also from Kerala, we have got it, show that the development had occurred in gradual stages here itself and not from anyone outside. That is the important thing. In Europe, symbol making appeared in Upper Paleolithic era, 40,000 years ago, and language appeared late in prehistory only. But trace the history of language in Europe and India, the living languages and traditions in both areas on a parallel basis, we find Europe developed it later than India and the Southeast Asia. and Americas are the only, and Southeast Asia and Americas are the only candidates with some chance to be contemporaries or late contemporaries of Indian culture, not Europe. Archaeologist Randall White says 1 lakh years ago there was a total absence of language. It was slow to develop from 65,000 years ago. There are several evidences which he points out. One is that the deliberate burial of dead with grave goods in Upper Paleolithic Neanderthal men remains. Two, image making and body adornment seen with Upper Paleolithic later Stone Age. Three, sudden increase in technological innovation and cultural change. Four, regional differences in culture, expression, and product of social boundaries. Five, evidence of long distance contact, exotic objects, rare stones, etc., being shared and traded. Six, planned cities, houses, dwellings, which increase in size, language being a prerequisite for planning and coordination of any kind. And seven, technology moved from stone to raw materials like bone, antlers, bones, shells, clay, etc. Now, accepting a multi-regional model of development of human race, we find these evidences for language, communication, planning, as well as long-term plans for education and understanding of the production of sound and its various aspects, a syntax, a system of observation, and tool making for research and observation of heavens, sea travels for trade and commerce, etc. And both Prakrit and Sanskrit languages simultaneously developing a multilingual development in the Indian subcontinent, as well as a continuous existence of human race here from the very early prehistoric times. None of these can be ignored in the development of human race. All are continuous in India. In Linnaean hierarchy, we do accept species, subspecies, genus, tribes, subfamily, family, order, cohort, class, phylum, and kingdom. Homo sapiens have all these. And the tribes of India and Southeast Asia are a unique group which deserves to be studied in detail along with their American colleagues and relatives in Yucatan and Mexico in Ketumala, that is the Great Guatemala, Atlantis, so that the missing link in human understanding of prehistoric and historic man would be bridged. I just remember that Iguanidae, a reptile seen only in North and South America, is also seen in Fiji and Tonga, that is in Western Polynesia, thousands of kilometers away, separated by ocean. And how did they reach it? Reach there? Did they reach by raft? Or did they reach by ship? Or developed as two separate endemic genera either? The same is applicable to humans also. So also the Asian and African camel and its cousin in South America called llama actually had extinct fossils in North America showing a complete faunal continuity. It is the same with human race. Why think that it is from Africa and Africa, India, Southeast Asia, South America, everywhere human race developed at the same time? That is possible. A multiple development is possible for any race. Going back to our discussion of language and its development, the storytelling in children and the earliest ancestors have a common feature. What is a story? Unless there is share, something is shared, meaning between the narrator and the listener, a story is of no value. But if there is a shared meaning, it is everything. The proverb says, believe him who tells a story first, and bring him grapes to quench his thirst. This is to be remembered. And the stories in many cultures interpreted as the shared meaning between the narrator and the listener, the people who share that culture. The Purana and Itihasa of India are such shared, still living stories of our ancestors of foregone era. And they tell us exactly what they believed, how they lived, and how they lived and loved and fought for dharma, etc. To narrate an experience as a story is a basic human instinct. Brenner thought it as a crowning achievement of human development. There are two modes of thought. One, a narrative, which is concern for human conditions, as seen in the storytelling of Itihasa, Purana, etc. The other is a paradigmatic, logico-scientific with consistency of purpose and non-contradictory and believable historical scientific accounts. When we view astronomy, we have to see it as the second group. And when we view Idihasa Purana as the first, we have to see. But we find many of the findings of the second type also repeated in the first. That is, that become a part of a shared knowledge for the common people. Many of the Leela Charita of the ancients were group narratives as drama, play for masses, and the roles were from historical figures like Krishna, Rama, etc. Donovan in 1996 speaks of the group narrative as drama therapy. The Indian literature, its Nadaka, its Leela Charita, etc., are in this way well developed educational material for entertainment and for social therapy and educative purposes, all combined together. Stories link the exceptional with the ordinary man, according to Brunner in 1990. The viability of a culture inheres in its capacity for resolving conflicts, for exploring differences, and renegotiating peaceful meanings. Stories in cultural perspectives are important not only for children but also for adults in this sense. A narrative like Bhagavata, like Ramayana, sequenced in lines, conveys such meaning to Indian society. We come to know of ourselves through construction of an extended self in these stories. Ecology of human development. You have to see ecology of human development as a progressive mutual accommodation between the growing human being and the changing properties of immediate settings in which the person, the child or an adult lives. The ecological environment is a nesting arrangement of concentric structures contained within the other. The structures are micro, meso, and exo structures. Micro or home, school, etc. Meso for these primary groups as well as the peer group and their expectations of what the child or individual should become or do. Then there is an exo. Exo is the workplace, the professional environment, and finally the macrocosm, which is community, the society, the nation, and the entire world. So ecological transitions, we learn to operate simultaneously in two or more levels from our childhood onwards. This understanding of ourselves, our environment, our culture, our dharma was perpetuated by language acquisition. And in this respect, the oldest languages which do exist still with the paradigmatic, logisto-scientific consistency as well as with narratives, storytellings for masses in India, both for the scholar and for the masses. It has to be taken into account. In all other civilizations, we find certain features, but not all of such intellectual superiority and skill. And this continuous, consistent behavior of Indian people is something remarkable in the history of human development of language and intelligence. This I do not say because I am an Indian. Don't think that I am saying this because I am an Indian, but because I am convinced from my references and my study of the different cultures and the different systems of knowledge of India compared to modern knowledge systems. So we cannot negate our languages like Sanskrit, Tamil, and other languages. We cannot negate our literature in these great languages. Only then we will be able to realize what we are really.